So Michael Popak, legal AF, the Department of Justice is not taking it lying down that a single federal judge in a rural district in Louisiana federal court issued a sweeping injunction to basically stop and ban the entire executive branch of the Biden administration at every level from participating in the public square of ideas because he enjoined them, every one of them. I mean, I'd have to spend the entire hot take here naming all of the organizations, departments, and agencies and officials within the Biden administration that have been banned and enjoined by Judge Terry Doughty in Louisiana from having really any contact with social media platforms, even to offer their own opinions and express their own First Amendment expression about a certain thing, as they attempt, rightfully so, to at least counterbalance the clearinghouse of misinformation and badly formed ideas that is the internet and that is social media. So for every anti-vaxxer voter misinformation, telling people the voting day is the wrong day to suppress the vote, or telling them to shoot Clorox into their veins to counteract the current pandemic, you'd hope the government is able to run a public service announcement or encourage the social media platforms. You're private. You may want to take down a couple of those things, or not have that terrorist website exchanging information, through your direct messages, your DMs, or don't allow China and Russia or other foreign powers to interfere with our voting rights or our voting and election process. I thought these were bad things in America. I didn't realize it was a plank in the Republican Party's platform. Well, apparently it is, and Judge Doughty got the memo to stop and prevent and ban and bar the government, because it's run by Democrats at this moment, the executive branch, from having any role in the public square. They got to sit there bound and gagged and let the other crazies take over, because that's what happens when the ratio is flipped and the crazies get on top. Then you have, it's not Facebook, it's crazy Facebook. It's not Instagram, it's crazy Instagram. And that's what's going to happen based on this injunction. The other terrible byproduct of the injunction, or direct result, is that the government regularly meets with, different departments. The Department of State, for instance, regularly meets with Facebook and other social media platforms to talk about and try to prevent foreign interference in our elections. Well, just this week, because of the injunction, and nobody can figure it out because it's so both overbroad and constitutionally vague and violative of everyone's First Amendment rights at the government level, because they have their own rights, the Secretary of State, the State Department, didn't meet with Facebook, with Meta this week, to talk about foreign interference and how to combat it, how to prevent it on their social media platform, and give them advice on how to do that. Because remember, they're a private platform. They're not the government. It's not a utility, even though we like to treat it like it is and act like it is. It's owned by somebody. We know who those somebodies are. Two of them are battling it out right now over who's going to have like the latest go-to, social media platform. They both begin with T, for those that are trying to scratch their heads and figure out what's going on. And yes, I am on Threads at MS Popak. Okay, so what's the Department of Justice going to do when they get an injunction running 7 pages against everybody that says you can't have any communications with social media platforms that urge, encourage, press the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of protected First Amendment speech without defining what that is, and then in the same breath saying, but you're allowed to express your own First Amendment speech. And you can take down unprotected First Amendment speech. I'm just not going to tell you what that is. This is the judge basically talking through his order now. You figure it out. And you can, continue, just go about your day now that I've banned you from the public square of ideas, right? The soapbox of ideas. And the government's like, what are you talking about, Judge? Respectfully. First of all, you haven't told us what the dividing line is for protected and unprotected First Amendment speech in your view. So therefore, we have to completely put, duct tape over our mouth because we don't know what we're supposed to say or not say without running afoul of your injunction and getting into contempt of court. The judge is playing a dangerous, unconstitutional game of, I'm thinking of a number. And the Department of Justice is left with the unenviable position of saying 6, and the judge saying, nope, that's not it. Pick again. I'm thinking of protected First Amendment speech. Well, are we allowed to do this? Because we did it. Nope, not allowed to do that. Sorry, wrong. Johnny, what do we have for him? We have the constitutional First Amendment home game. That's where we're at. And it's now changing the interaction and eliminating the interaction between federal government and social media platforms, which are private entities, which are not regulated. Newsflash, social entities, social media companies are not regulated that way by the FCC or anything else. They're private citizens. They have liability protection under the Communications Act, at least at present. So the government just wants to get in there and balance the crazies, right? And what's wrong with that? Except now it's enjoined. That's what's wrong with it. So they have asked the judge just in the last 2 days to stop or stay his own order to give them the opportunity and the space to run to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the most conservative court of appeals in our federal system, by the way, dominated by Republican appointees, including a lot of Trumpers. But you got to go there. I mean, you could try to go to the U.S. Supreme Court, but frankly, they'll just say, we're the appellate court of last resort. You got to go to the other intermediary appellate court first. That's how this works. So they have, Jack Smith has no choice. And the Department of Justice, well, actually, it's not Jack Smith. I'm so used to saying Jack Smith. The other aspects of the main justice led by Merrick Garland in Washington has no choice because it's a different group. I misspoke there. I'm doing so many hot takes on Jack Smith that sort of Freudian slip slipped out. So instead, it is a separate group based in Washington that deals with federal programs, and they are the ones out of what we call main justice that have brought the case and are bringing the appeal. And they basically told Judge Dougherty, you got a number of problems here. One, we don't know what you're talking about. Two, it's vague. We don't know what protected and unprotected First Amendment speech is, and it's internally inconsistent. In the same breath, you said, we still have our First Amendment speech. You're limiting our First Amendment speech and telling us that we can't have really any contact with social media. And as an example, we canceled our meetings between the State Department and Facebook, Meta, because over foreign interference of voting, which sounds like it would be a good thing to try to have that dialogue, because technically, based on how you've written your injunction, Your Honor, we don't feel we can do that without running afoul of it. So if you want to vacate your injunction, great, but at the meantime, at least stay its operation so that we can take a fast track to the Fifth. They'll then go to the Fifth, flip a coin. It depends on which 3-judge panel is assigned. If it's overwhelmingly Trumpers, this is going to be a loss, and they're going to have to take this directly to the Supreme Court. I think for the Fifth Circuit, the duty judge, the associate justice that's over the Fifth Circuit, I believe is Sam Alito. So that means Sam Alito can do one of two things when he gets this case. He can on his own decide it, right? Or he can send it back, that's the shadow docket, or he can send it back to all 9 to have full briefing. And we're going to have to see which one it is. They've gotten away from, one judge, one justice making these decisions anymore. They did it kind of earlier in the term. But for right now, they're going to have to get him off his summer holiday because Alito usually goes to Europe on right-wing Federalist money dime, as we've already reported here on Legal AF and MeidasTouch Network a number of times. They'll have to get him on the phone, do an emergency hearing with him. I'm sure he'll send it over to the full court, but frankly, the full court doesn't get together until October. So we're at least 3 months away from the next term of the Supreme Court. And in the meantime, in that 90-day period, then we would have the Biden administration completely sidelined from the public square, which is a terrible place to be. If you don't think it'll be a Hobbesian dystopian landscape for the next 90 days, if his injunction doesn't get stayed pending the appeal and all this process, watch Facebook blow up with misinformation, voter interference, voter suppression, foreign interference in our elections, and everything else. This will become a circus with rabid and crazed monkeys running around everywhere, throwing feces at democracy. That's what we're going to see over the next 90 days. I hate to be so apocalyptic, but that's what's going to happen if the government can't get in there and encourage social media to do the right thing, right? And if they're not going to take down hate speech and speech that is not protected by the First Amendment and that is going to get people's lives in danger and potentially kill them with medical misinformation and have them suppress their vote with voter misinformation, right? Then that's what's going to happen. And we're going to watch it happen in slow motion, like a train colliding with a tractor trailer, but in slow motion. If this stay doesn't happen by the Judge Dougherty as the Department of Justice takes this appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court. Once it gets to the Supreme Court and the full 9, it's anybody's guess. We've had some very recent disturbing trends with this 6-3 right-wing MAGA majority Supreme Court in the First Amendment arena. So I don't know what they're going to do. If you look at the 303 creative case in which a phony website designer who had no intention of doing a website for gay people and got a phony email that wasn't even from a gay person in order to do a website to give her standing to bring a lawsuit, to allow the right wing to issue an order of their choosing, dusting it off, waiting for this phony plaintiff to come along, in which they ruled that the First Amendment allows people who accept money in public commerce, who are in a creative field, to discriminate, to be racist, to be bigots to people's face and say, sorry, Jewish person, black person, brown person, person of fill in the blank national origin or gender orientation, LGBTQ plus included. I am not, even though I'm public and I have a public license for my town and a occupational license or a business license, and I make it for everybody else, I'm only serving whites today. That's okay under the First Amendment, according to at least Justice Gorsuch and 6 others on his right-wing side. So how they apply the First Amendment here to the Biden administration? Well, then you'd think, well, they're in favor of a robust First Amendment. Then they'll think that the Biden administration their First Amendment rights are being violated. But you could just see them just as easily saying, no, it's not their First Amendment rights we're worried about. It's the First Amendment rights of people they disagree with. And the fact that they're pressuring, which there's no evidence of that, pressuring social media to take down things, that's suppression. That's government violating the First Amendment. You could see Gorsuch writing just such an opinion. We'll watch that development from the appeal filing that just happened by the Department of Justice, the request for a stay to Judge Dougherty, what happens at the Fifth Circuit, the fast track to Judge Alito on summer vacation, and then to the U.S. Supreme Court, likely in October or sometime in the next term, right here on the MeidasTouch Network, only on the MeidasTouch Network. You can follow me, Michael Popak, on all things social media, including on Threads at MS Popak. And then I co-anchor also on the MeidasTouch Network and co-founded the leading U.S. politics and law podcast called Legal AF on Wednesdays, Saturdays on the MeidasTouch Network. This is Michael Popak, Legal AF reporting.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.